All right, let's talk about something that pretty much every B2B professional has felt before. You deliver this perfect proof of concept, the client seems to love it, and then nothing. You get ghosted. Today, we're going to dig into why that success you thought you had was actually a failure from the start.
I mean, picture this, right? You just wrapped up a major POC. The tech did everything it was supposed to, just flawlessly. It did exactly what you said it would do. And the client, they seemed super impressed, nodding along in all the meetings.
And then crickets. The whole deal just stalls out. Your emails start going unanswered. If this sounds a little too familiar, then you've experienced what today's source material calls a successful failure. So, what in the world went wrong here? Okay, so to really get a handle on what's happening, we need to put a name to it. This isn't just, a stalled deal. It's a specific kind of problem. It's the successful failure. So what is a successful failure? It's this weird situation where the technology is a complete win, but the business outcome is a total loss. Your pilot, your proof of concept, it works perfectly, but the contract just never shows up. You've basically scored this amazing technical victory that leads you right into a commercial dead end. So, what's the root cause of this whole mess? Well, it really just boils down to one single fundamental mistake. We're validating the wrong thing. Completely. Turns out, most of us have the wrong idea about what a proof of concept is actually supposed to do. And here it is, the core mistake. You spent all that time, all that energy proving that your technology works. But what you should have been proving is that the whole engagement works, that the entire relationship from start to finish is built to actually convert into a paying contract. Okay, so to avoid falling into this trap, we've got to think way beyond just the tech. This framework breaks down success into 5 absolutely critical dimensions. These are the things that decide whether your POC turns into a signed deal or just another ghost story for the team.
First up, Dimension 1, problem economics. It sounds fancy, but it's simple. Is this problem actually worth solving for your client? Because this is where people fall into what the source calls the diagnostic trap. So, imagine this. A startup goes in and perfectly proves that a client's internal documentation is a total disaster. The diagnosis? Flawless. But here's the kicker. In proving how bad the problem was, they also revealed just how expensive and politically painful it would be to fix it. The cost of change was way higher than the pain of the problem. So the client? They just walked away.
And that leads to a really sharp question you have to ask yourself. If you switched off your solution tomorrow, what would the client actually lose? And I mean in real hard numbers. If you can't answer that with figures that the client themselves has agreed to, you might already be heading for that same trap. All right, number 2, stakeholder alignment. Now, here's a fatal mistake a lot of us make, thinking you're selling to just one person. The reality is, the person who feels the pain of the problem, the person who decides if your solution actually works, and the person who holds the purse strings, they are almost never the same person. You have to map out this triad. If you haven't talked to all 3, you are flying completely blind. But you know what? There's often a 4th person that almost everyone forgets about, the opponent. You have to ask yourself, is there somebody in that company whose job, whose budget, whose entire influence depends on this problem not being solved? Because trust me, internal politics will kill your deal way faster than any technical bug ever could. Okay, on to Dimension 3, governance readiness. This is all about whether the client has their act together internally to even make this work. You need a team on their side. That means an active executive sponsor, someone who's actually clearing roadblocks for you. You need a business owner from the team that's affected, who's your champion. You need a dedicated person on their end who isn't just fitting this in on Friday afternoons. And of course, you need easy access to their subject matter experts. And here's the real litmus test for this. Is the client just committing their budget, or are they committing their people's time? Because when a client isn't willing to put their own team's valuable hours on the line, that's a huge signal. It tells you this problem isn't really urgent enough for them to fix. And that, my friends, is a massive red flag. Which brings us right to number 4, commercial conversion. Look, you have to build the bridge from the pilot to the full contract during the POC, not after it's over. That means you've got to agree on a simple ROI. You need to know the exact budget line that's going to pay for this. You have to get the actual contract signers involved early. And you need clear, written down go/no-go criteria for what turns this into a real deal. And please never, ever forget this golden rule. The people who use your product are not the same people who sign the contract for it. You could have a dozen employees absolutely loving what you've built, but if the person who controls the budget isn't totally sold on the ROI, you haven't built a business. You've just created a really popular and expensive hobby inside their company.
Okay, last but not least, dimension 5, delivery viability. The question here isn't just, hey, can we build this thing? It's, can we actually deliver this profitably and sustainably when it goes big? And that means being super clear about what is out of scope so you can stop that dreaded scope creep. It means finding all the integration and compliance headaches up front, and it means being brutally honest with yourselves. Can our team actually support this without unsustainable heroic efforts?
Here's a quick pop quiz for you. Right now, what have you explicitly, on paper, excluded from the scope of your current POC? If you can't answer that question immediately, I've got bad news. Your scope is already creeping, and you're headed for trouble. So when you take all 5 of these dimensions together, the economics, the stakeholders, the governance, the commercials, and the delivery, it forces this really fundamental shift in how you even think about a proof of concept in the first place. See, most of us run a POC to validate a minimum viable product, an MVP. We're just trying to answer the question, does the technology work? But the big shift here is to think in terms of a minimum viable business, an MVB. And the question completely changes. It's no longer, does it work? It's, will they buy it? And that one little change in perspective forces you to deal with all 5 of those dimensions we just walked through.
So let's land this plane by talking about the real cost of getting this wrong, because it's so much more than just one lost deal. It's about putting on a show, what the source material calls expensive product theater.
And this is the line that really hits home. A proof of concept that works technically but completely bombs commercially, that isn't a success. It is expensive product development theater. You've put on a fantastic show. It cost a ton of time and money, but in the end, the audience didn't buy a ticket for the main event. And that leaves us with one last question for you to take with you. As you start planning your next big POC, you need to ask yourself this one hard question. Are you setting this up to be a real business validation, or are you just rehearsing for some really, really expensive theater?